No, 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 no. No, we don't have time for this nonsense now. Hi, for those of you who wanted a more hands-on tutorial on how to make height maps, this one is for you. Come on! So, I'm using Photoshop, but you should be able to follow along with whatever graphics editor you use. Here I have a blank image, 400 by 400 pixels. I start with creating 3 groups, height, grass and stone. You can call them whatever you like, but this is what I'm calling them. Then I move the default layer into the height group and create a new layer in each of the other groups, grass and stone. I select the height group and right-click to select the blending options. In the blending options, I uncheck these checkboxes for green and blue. This means that now the layers in the height group will only affect the red channel of the image. Then I do the same for the grass and stone groups, but keeping the green checkbox checked for the grass group and the blue one for the stone group. Let's pause here for a moment just to discuss why I am doing this and what you can do instead in case your graphics editor doesn't support setting color channels per group or layer. As I explained in the height map tutorial, the 3 color channels of the image each control one specific aspect of the height map. Red controls the height, green controls the amount of grass, and blue controls whether the surface should be stone instead of the plain dirt it would otherwise be. By exclusively setting each of the groups to only affect a specific color channel, I effectively separate the function of each group. Whatever I paint on a layer in the height group will only affect the red channel, hence only has an effect on the height of the height map. No matter what I do on the layers in the grass group, it will only affect the green channel, hence only affect the amount of grass in the height map. And, as you might have guessed, the layers in the stone group will only affect the blue channel, no matter what I do in them. And the blue channel is used for parts of the height map which should be roads or stony, rocky areas. If you don't have the options to select color channels for groups or layers, you can instead set the green and blue layers to the screen blending mode, which should be available in most graphic editors. With the screen mode, the color in an underlying layer is retained even if you paint over them in a layer with the screen blending mode. To the left you can see the effect of the green and blue layers being set to screen mode. The contents of those layers are nicely blended with the underlying layers. Now let's take a look at what happens if those layers were set to normal blending mode instead. Here, to the right, you can see that the overlying layers block out any information in the layers underneath. If you get issues like adding grass to your height map and suddenly there is no longer any ground at all where you added grass, this is probably the problem, and you should make sure that the layer you just added still lets the underlying layers through. Pay attention that setting a layer to screen mode is not the same as changing the opacity of the layer. Okay, back to the height map making. Then I fill the layer in the height group with red of value 30. This is a reasonable starting level, as it leaves room for adding rivers and stuff digging into the ground later. Next, I create a new layer in the height group and start painting with increasingly brighter reds, increasing the color value by 10 for each step. This will become a hill. Then, with this layer selected, I chose the blur effect and find a nice value where the obvious thresholds between the colors are cleanly smoothed out. Let's take a look in game. Now I add another layer to the height group. I chose a darker red color with the value 5, and I paint a broad wiggly line through the map. This will become a river. With the layer selected, I choose blur and find a nice value to smooth out the edges of the river. This will create a smooth slope from the ground level down to the bottom of the river. Let's take a look. I select the layer in the grass group. Then, by using the magic wand tool, I select a range of colors which slightly creep up the hillside and down into the river. I set my color to pure green, value 255, and I fill the layer in the grass group. Let's take a look at this. I blur this layer to get nice smooth transitions where the grass ends. The grass looks a bit flat and uniform in height, so I create a new layer in the grass group and I fill it with black. With black as my foreground color and white as my background color, I choose the Render Difference Clouds effect to get this nice organic effect. I make the Difference Clouds layer a clipping mask so that it only affects the grass layer directly underneath it. This will create some nice variations in the grass. Then I turn off the visibility for the stone and grass layers, focusing on the height group only. Now I add another layer to the height group. I pick the pen tool to draw a nice smooth curve. I make sure the line style is a plain solid line. I set the line width to 60 pixels and the line color to red, value 34. This will make the road bank for a road. I choose the color red 34 to slightly have it raised over my base red 30 ground. Now I rasterize the line path and make a selection based on the line I just created. I create a new layer in the height group and contract my selection slightly. This will become the actual road surface on top of the road bank. I set my color to red 35 and one value increase from the red 34 I used for the road bank and fill my new layer. I select the road bank layer and blur it slightly to get a nice sloped raise in the road bank. Let's take a look. Let's make the grass and stone layers visible again. I make a selection based on the road bank I just created. Then I feather the selection slightly and delete this selection from the grass layer. We don't want grass on our road. Now I make another selection from the road surface layer and then I fill the layer in the stone group with pure blue of value 255. This will make the road surface a mid-gray stone material. Again, I use the pen tool to draw a smooth curve down the middle of the road. I make sure it's a dotted line and set the width of the line to 4 pixels. Then I set the line to color blue 10. As you might remember from the height map tutorial, blue 10 will make the white material that we use for road markings and such. Let's take a look. As a final step, I will add some irregularity to the very smooth hill we made. I select a layer with the hill on it in the height group. Then I pick the displace effect and use it to displace the pixels in the hill layer. This is the image I use for the displacement effect. Unfortunately, I can't share it with you as it's based on a texture asset that I've bought. But any grayscale image should work. Just experiment around until you find something you like. Let's have a look. I add a texture to the ground node in the editor. And finally, some water. And that's it. Good luck with your height maps.